One Story, Our Voice is a collaboration musical project. We've brought together homeless people, poets and artists for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
That's right. A group of young poets and musicians met 10 homeless people and narrated their stories into powerful poetry and music. Shortly, we'll be joined by some of those homeless and artists involved. But first, here to tell us more, we're joined by one of its creators. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, Farah Mohammed. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome to the show.
Alaikum salam.
Congratulations. I mean, that's an interesting collaboration.
Thank you, thank you.
That's right. You've got artists, homeless people and poets all coming together on one stage. Tell us how this came about.
Well, I'd like to tell you a little story, but before I do, thank you for having me on the show today. It's an honor to be here.
That's our pleasure. I mean, we always look for innovative ideas, and I think this really caught our eye.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Funny enough, the story started off a few years ago when I went on a holiday with a few friends to Morocco, and I had my first halal burger from McDonald's. So I was really, really ecstatic and excited to have that burger. But as soon as we were leaving the McDonald's restaurant itself, I came across a homeless person, and so I thought, you know, let me get him a meal as well and give him a bit of change I had in my pocket. So I did that, and as we were walking away from the McDonald's itself, the old man approached me and he had tears in his eyes. And I noticed he had a bit of wound on his hand as well. And I was completely overwhelmed, and I got emotionally overwhelmed by what he was trying to say to me. I couldn't understand because I didn't understand the language, but I knew there was a story there, there was something there. And this stayed with me since that time. And last year...
That transition from meeting somebody homeless to thinking about putting them onto the stage with music, with poetry, that's a bit of creativity there.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I come from a Somali background, and poetry is in my blood. It's how we tell our stories, how we pass on our histories. And even before the Civil War, we would always have poetry challenge social issues. So going back to that story, and then a year back, last year, I did some volunteer work at a homeless shelter. I took my family with me. Again, I was completely overwhelmed by the amount of people that we were working with and trying to help. And I knew there was a story there. There's got to be a story. There's a way to give these guys a platform to be heard.
I can imagine how the artists would have taken to that idea when you came to them. But how did the homeless people react when you came to them and said, look, we want to collaborate with you and make something musical out of your life story? How did that all happen?
At first, they had a lot of questions for me when I met them. They were like, so what's this idea? What exactly are you trying to do?
I'd have thought homeless people would be quite sceptical.
Exactly.
They'd be quite cautious. And not many people want to share a story that's really taken them down to the bottom of the ladder, unfortunately.
Exactly. And that's what I told them. I told them, this is not my project, it's going to be our project. You have a say, you decide whether you want to be anonymous when it comes to the delivery of the story, and you have a say in terms of how you want your story to be told. And I gave them full responsibility and full control of the project, and they loved that.
But I'm assuming you didn't find the 10 people straight away.
I didn't know.
It must have taken you a few doors to knock on before people came forward.
The amount of emails
was that difficult? Was it, I mean, did it come to a point where you thought, I'm just going to give up?
No, I didn't, no. There was times I thought, okay, this is an idea, but I gotta pursue it. I gotta give it all, unless something stops me, but I can't give up. And the more I was persistent, the more contacts I made and the more outreach work I did, the more people were quite receptive. I started off just one person with an idea, and in the end I had over 40 people, 40 strangers that I didn't know before. And all these people come together.
Along that way, you've met some great inspirational people who have helped you and who have been inspiration for you, among them Jon Snow, the news broadcaster. Tell us about how he influenced you.
Well, he was one of the people that I interviewed, my first ever interview, and I wanted to know about the youth representation in the media, how journalists are tackling this, because you get a lot of exposure when it comes to young people being labelled as antisocial, having teen pregnancies, gang crimes and so forth. So I wanted to speak to someone that is actually in the field.
And the connection with the youth is because your organisation is run by young people, isn't it?
Exactly. We work to represent young people. We believe in the greatness of young people, and we try and provide platform for them to be heard through arts and writing. And so Jon Snow I met through one of my connections. He was very, very wonderful to me as well, and I really enjoyed the chance just to sit with him and have a coffee with him and interview him. It's
always difficult, I assume, that if you've got an idea that you really want your fingers in every single pie. How difficult was it to let the artists and the poets get on with, working with the homeless people? Or were you really interested in giving direction, or did you just leave it to their kind of call?
The word I used a lot was I facilitated the workshop, the environment. I provided this opportunity and I let everything happen organically. I designed 7 workshops and rehearsals. So every week on a Thursday, 6:30 to about 8:30, we'd meet. I'll provide food and I'll provide the environment. And they would just get on. They would just so excited just to talk about their experiences, the homeless people, and the artists were interested to absorb that information.
What was it like for yourself? I mean, you must, talk about inspiration, Jon Snow's on one side of the fence, but what about the inspiration of those people who were on the streets at one time? What was it like listening to their stories, where they'd come from, where they'd ended up?
That's a very good question. At the end of the project, I was completely transformed. And not only me, I noticed that the artists and the homeless people, the project made us more sympathetic to people, because homelessness can happen to anyone, regardless of your ethnicity or gender.
That's something not many of us think about,
Exactly.
that it can happen to anyone. And I mean, I remember reading the stories of 4 people who were at the height of their careers, and within 24 hours, they were on the street.
Exactly.
And that was just a downward spiral, unfortunately.
Exactly, and we neglect to forget that, it could just happen at any moment. And we take granted for the things that we're blessed with. And that's the project that it did that for me. I've noticed that I can't walk past a homeless person without actually stopping and having a conversation.
Well, look, we're going to meet the poets and find out a bit more about the stories very, very shortly. Stay with us.
Very much.
Will do.
Thank you.